Hello all, my name is Brendan Dillon, the President of the Student Government Association here at Catholic University. I'm here with President Garvey, and we're having our Student Government Association Town Hall. Unfortunately, instead of having this in person, we are meeting online via Google Meet and recording this beforehand in order to make sure that we're all keeping our safe distance during this difficult time. For the layout of this event, I will be speaking first, giving some remarks. President Garvey will then give remarks himself, and we'll move into a question and answer from questions from you all students. Once we're done, we're going to thank you all and sign off. That being said, I'll be moving into my remarks. President Garvey, parents, professors, deans, faculty, staff, and most importantly, my fellow undergraduate students. It is both an honor and a privilege to address you. However, I wish I was not constrained to addressing you from my apartment and can speak to you all face to face. What I'd be most excited to see is all of the members of our student government who has been working tirelessly throughout the year for all of our classmates. This wonderful team led by myself and the rest of the executive board, Vice President Caitlin Shanahan, Treasurer Monica Wallace, Secretary Megan Walsh, have all spent their time in office dedicated to one thing only: the undergraduate community. Countless hours have been spent revising how student government operates and making necessary steps to bettering all students' experiences. And our university has been doing the same. These past few weeks has been a remarkably difficult time due to the coronavirus, and I'm thankful to have the leadership at Catholic University working so hard for us students. Our university has withstood over 130 years of good times and bad since it was founded in 1887. We have overcome world wars and pandemics like the 1918 Spanish flu. And we will be getting through this coronavirus emergency stronger than ever before. Our university is working overtime to help us get through this difficult period in time. This is true for all levels of employees at our university. And they're working not only for us at Catholic University, but for our brothers and sisters across the globe. Our researchers are proving why we are known as one of the top Catholic research universities in America by taking a break from their current research to help fight against COVID-19. This is a shining example of the impactful work done by our community. And impactful work has been continued by SGA throughout this entire academic year. Secretary Walsh has worked hard to make sure our communication with you all has been constant, consistent, and effective. She has built a strong team to help her with the many initiatives she has undertaken. This includes creating positions like multiple photographers to help us photograph our history, a videographer continuing our lovely Cardinal chirp, and a website designer that works on revising and updating CatholicSGA.com so that you all can have update information on what student government is doing. One of the most impactful initiatives that Secretary Walsh has implemented is informing all the students when Treasury Board meetings take place and who is presenting. This allows all of us the opportunity to attend the meetings where the Student Activity Fund, which we all pay into, is being allocated. Thanks to Secretary Walsh, student government's communication has never been more effective. Treasurer Wallace has led an active Treasury Board that has improved the board's operations in leaps and bounds this year. She has heard the need to clarify the workings of Treasury Board, so her and her board updated the bylaws to properly reflect how it can most effectively help the student clubs and organizations. She has also responded to the dramatic increase of presentations this year with prudence and fiscal responsibility, with a funding rate of 62.6%. Thanks to her leadership, the fund we all pay into has been allocated by students for students in a responsible and sustainable way. Vice President Caitlin Shanahan has worked tirelessly leading the Senate this year to put forth well-researched legislation that stems from student concerns and acts to serve all sectors of our undergraduate community. With the help of the students, our Senate has been able to pass pieces of legislation that affects the academic and social life of all students. When you wanted more hours on the weekend to utilize our fitness resources, student government worked with the Kane Fitness Center to implement a trial run this spring to extend Kane fitness hours on the weekends. This successful trial run will hopefully lead to a permanent change come the fall. When you felt the library could better accommodate your academic needs, student government worked with the Mullen Library to implement 24-hour access earlier in the semester, starting this spring. And you expressed concern regarding the first year experience to your representatives. Student government advocated for you as we worked with those in charge to better unify the curriculum. And when you felt you could be better enabled to fight for the unborn, we worked with you to pass a resolution now being worked on by the administration to cancel classes on the day for March for Life. And our student government has grown with its internal capabilities. Mac Bowen has led executive initiatives to analyze key issues of the student body for this year and many years to come. Maya Escobar has led SGA Express to reach long-term sustainability. And Matthew Gage has led our research branch in its first of many years with entrepreneurial capabilities. And none of this work would be possible without the support of the administration at Catholic University. I'd like to specifically express my gratitude to President Garvey, Provost Dominguez, Dr. Martins, Dr. Brown, Dr. Meyer, Dean Sawyer, Dean Jennings, Steve Kreider, and Antoine Harper. Your continued willingness to work with student government to better the undergraduate experience knew no limit. Thank you for enabling us to do our best to work for our fellow classmates. Thanks to the administration and everybody within SGA, we have acted with subsidiarity and solidarity to promote the common good and human dignity of every undergraduate student. In this time that exudes questions unknown, we must continue our commitment to all four of these pillars of Catholic social teaching. That is why I have reached out to each and every one of you to hear your concerns. Know that I have heard you, and I am working actively in order to answer your questions. In this time, we must all commit ourselves to standing in solidarity with our classmates and neighbors. St. Pope John Paul II explained this action of unity best in his papal encyclical, Solicitude Rea Socialis, when he said, "Solidarity is not a feeling of vague compassion or shallow distress at the misfortune of so many people, both near and far. On the contrary, it is a firm and persevering determination to commit oneself to the common good. That is to say, to the good of all and of each individual, because we are all really responsible for all." Let his definition of solidarity act as a call to action for all of us, a call to exemplify strength and resilience so that we may commit ourselves to serve each other. We pride ourselves in the strength and resilience of our student body family of over 3,000 strong. And that is why I'm so comfortable saying that we will come out of this crisis stronger than before, and we all have a role to play. To our freshmen, use this time to continue great friendships made during your inaugural year at Catholic University by staying in touch. Continue pursuing your passions as a part of your clubs and organizations, and finish the academic year strong by establishing work habits that will stay with you throughout the rest of your college career. To our sophomores and juniors, take leadership in boosting the morale of our student body and come back to campus excited, prepared, and willing to continue the kind, welcoming, compassionate, and spirited student body that makes our community such a blessing. And to my fellow seniors, our year is not over yet. Continue your time as a Cardinal, celebrating the friendships you have made, finishing the year strong in academic and spirited excellence, and helping your involvements continue the great work it has done so far in this academic year. We are all experiencing a transition into living situations we never expected to be in. And that is why we are all called to commit ourselves to what St. Pope John Paul II laid out for all of us. Commit yourself to the good of the many individuals in your life, both within and outside of Catholic University. Our strength in our community, which is grounded in our ever-growing relationship with Christ, is best supported by each and every one of you. And know that your student government is committed itself to doing just that. This is a university and a student body community that I hold dear to my heart. As we have fought for you in the past, and as our journey is far from over, we will continue to fight for you. No level of separation can prevent that. When we work hard and commit ourselves to solidarity, we can stand strong in saying that our university and our undergraduate community will get through this as it always has, together. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all are doing well, and know that I am praying for each and every one of you. Now, President Garvey will be giving some remarks as well.
Thank you, Brendan. And let me say for my own part, what a great pleasure it has been to deal with the SGA this year. It's been a great year. Your leadership has been really wonderful, and I've appreciated working with your entire team. So, and thanks for putting this evening together, especially at a time when everybody's gone from campus, and it's good to have an opportunity to reach out to them. I don't know whether you know or not, but I myself tested positive for the coronavirus. I'd been making a trip to the continent on some business for the university, and when I came back, I showed some symptoms within a couple of days. So, for the past 10 days, I was cooped up. I was released yesterday by the DC Department of Health. And during the time I was cooped up, I had a lot of time to read. My doctor told me that he was rereading Camus' The Plague, and so I joined him in that exercise. I'd read it when I was a young man, when I was in college, and it had a very different impact on me this time. One reason was that I'd had the experience of living through this kind of pandemic, and so it made certain things stand out that hadn't registered with me when I'd read it the first time. There was, first of all, the disruption of everyday life. Like school was canceled, stores were closed, traffic disappeared, hospitals began to fill up, movie theaters and sporting arenas were deserted, restaurants and coffee shops closed. I got sprung from quarantine yesterday afternoon, as I said, and I went to pick up a pizza at Domino's across from Trinity. Jeannie was dying for a pizza, and she hadn't been out much either. So I ordered it online, and when I got to Domino's, the door was locked, and there was a I had to push these buttons, and the guy came to the door and shouted through the door. He wanted me to show him the order on the phone, which I showed him, and then he handed me the pizza through the door. Um, I've also noticed that we all have a tendency to wish harms away. This is something you see in The Plague. Camus says that everybody knows that pestilences have a way of recurring in the world, yet somehow we find it hard to believe in ones that will crash down on our head from a blue sky. The guy who was the prefect, the local magistrate in the novel, was personally convinced that it was a false alarm. And Dr. Bernard Rieu, the doctor who figures in the story, at first persuades himself that the public mustn't be alarmed. That wouldn't do at all. We've seen that happen in this case. And in the novel, there were those who took advantage of the occasion for personal profit. There was a guy, Cotard, whom we first meet. He's trying to commit suicide, but he finds that the plague is really working for him, and he starts selling contraband cigarettes and cheap whiskey. In our case, you probably saw the stories about the guy who bought up 17,000 bottles of Purell hand sanitizer, or the ones last week about Richard Burr, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who was getting daily briefings and then selling off stocks before the market tanked. So it came alive in a way that it hadn't before. A second thing that I noticed in the book was how different the world is now. The citizens, this takes place in Oran in northern Africa. In the novel, they suffer in ways that we don't really. Consider the kind of isolation. So the novel set in the 1940s. Think about what quarantine meant in that case. People were confined to their own homes or eventually to a soccer stadium. They'd see one another and nobody else. And we, on the other hand, are members of a virtual community. Here are you and I, who aren't really in the same room or keeping appropriate social distancing miles away from one another. But we're all members of virtual communities that meet regularly. I had a meeting of our board of trustees virtually on Monday and Tuesday of last week. I met with my virtues class this morning and connected with some of them over the weekend. And I meet almost every day with a coronavirus work group first thing in the morning. And Jeannie and I Skype and FaceTime with our children every day. The third thing that struck me was the sense of solidarity with which most of my circle of acquaintances at the university has approached our difficulties. This was true in the novel too, that people seem to be willing to put aside their own needs or concerns and to do the best for the common good. This might be what Camus at one point mentions. He talks about how the plague erases the uniqueness of each man's life. I think he means that doctors and nurses work overtime. They struggle with the shortages of personal protective equipment to treat as many patients as they can. In this case, our faculty gathered online by the hundreds to learn how to conduct their classes on Google Meet so that our students wouldn't have to suffer any interruption in their education. And our students, I have 25 in my class, and I've spoken with each one of them, and they have uncomplainingly worked from home, given up their spring sports seasons, some of them given up a chance to star in a play. I feel worse for the seniors who give up what's always the best of their 8 semesters in the university. It's really a difficult thing, but I haven't heard a word of complaint from them. Let me say just a few words about how we're dealing with the virus here on campus, how it's changed our business, and then I'm happy to answer some questions if you have them. Um, First of all, as you all know, we've moved almost all of our instruction online, and we'll do so through the end of the school year. We did this while our students were on spring break, so many of them just stayed at home and will be taking their classes on their laptops. I'm really interested to know from students how this is going. I've had my own experience in my own class, and it's been working fine, but it'll be a different experience in clinics, in labs, and the course that you're taking on producing your own podcasts. It's something that's harder to do on Zoom or Google Meet. The campus, as you all know, is closed to most students until the end of the year, except there are a few who need to stay. So we've restricted dining hours greatly. We provide food services, but we only have about 3 or 4 dozen people who are on campus, including the Garveys and the priests who are in Curly, and a few students are in the residence halls. A lot of our students have been concerned about retrieving their belongings, and we're trying to work out a method for doing that that'll comply with federal and district mandates about large crowds. People ought to know that their belongings are locked and secure, although we are entering rooms this week to look for perishables. So if you left bananas on your on your shelf, don't worry, we'll be picking them up. We also, I want to remind you that we're preparing for the 2021 academic year. The junior senior roommate selection will begin tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. And students can now log into My Housing to view their updated roommate selection date and time. And the sophomore lottery will begin on March 30th. The third thing is we've canceled, obviously, all large events on the campus and allowed individual vice presidents to decide about smaller ones. But this includes some really important things like Odyssey Day, which was going to take place on April 4th. We had a very big event called Gratis. It was a thank you dinner for everybody who's given scholarships and other gifts to the university. We had to cancel that last Monday. And obviously the Landmark Conference canceled its spring season, and we've also canceled all of our non-conference play and spring practices. We've made arrangements for our staff to work remotely. This is not something everybody can do, and so the decisions are up to various vice presidents. So, for example, in finance, about half of its people will go home and half will be working from on campus. And within enrollment management, there are always a few people there to take phone calls and make referrals. But many of the tours that we were giving on campus have been canceled or postponed, and we're doing those sorts of things online. For the people who work at the university, we've canceled overseas travel, and we've left decisions about domestic travel to the wisdom of the vice presidents. But you'd be surprised at how much travel is involved in the ordinary business of the university. My own travel for advancement purposes or for other kinds of governance issues, recruiting by our enrollment management people, recruiting by our athletics coaches. All of those things are, if they're not impossible to do, the meetings are hard to set up because everybody's staying inside and being careful these days. So, as you might suppose, all this has had really significant effects on operations outside academic affairs and student life as well. Let me close with a word about what I've noticed the past couple of weeks here. For the past 6 or 8 years, the standard media storyline has been about the division in the country along lines of politics, religion, race, sex. It's been true even in areas like foreign affairs, which have historically been bipartisan. But in the response of our community to the coronavirus, I've seen just the opposite. Our faculty, our staff, our students, the alumni, our parents and friends of the university have all put their own concerns aside and asked what they can do to help the people most affected. It's like John Kennedy's inaugural speech coming true. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country or your university. I felt this on a personal level. I mentioned that I'd tested positive for the virus. I had literally hundreds of emails, calls, texts, letters from around the world, from our students, from my fellow faculty members. So I want to thank everybody for their devotion to the university and for your help in the work of getting through this difficult patch that we're in right now. So I know you have some questions for me, and I'm happy to answer whatever you might want to ask on behalf of the students.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know I can speak on behalf of all the students when I say we greatly appreciate all that you have been doing, continue to do, and happy to hear that you're feeling healthy again.
Thank you.
The first question I think is one that you get almost every time the students get together with you in some form or another, and that is, are there any concrete plans moving forward with Marist Hall?
This is yeah. There's a kind of quiet arm wrestling contest going on between me and the vice president for finance about this. His plans, and he usually gets his way, is that Marist Hall is something that we're eventually going to have to take down. It's currently being used for storage of furniture and equipment and supplies. We did a very careful study about what it would take to make Marist into a proper, to do a renovation of Marist like we did for Maloney Hall, for example. And it would be at a minimum $25 million. And we'd only get about, as I recall, about 35,000 usable square feet out of it. That's just not money that's worth spending. We could build that kind of space for a lower price. It'd cost about $1.5 million to remove it, and at some point we're probably going to budget that as part of whatever project replaces the building. In the meantime, we can use it. I don't, it's the discussion that we've had about it is, I tell people about the house that Jeannie and I lived in Boston before we moved here. It was built in 1799, and in the basement, the floor was dirt, and there were these old tree trunks that had been holding up the first floor of the house for 200 years. So, and of course the basement leaked when it rained, and wasn't the best HVAC system in the world. So, but it was it was a crappy house, but we loved it. We lived in it, and it worked all right. Marist is kind of like that, except that it continues to sag, and there's water running underneath it that we haven't been able to solve. So, I wouldn't lay any money on the long-term survival of Marist.
Sure, that makes sense. Thank you. The second one is more for current events. This is something that I know my friends and I actually debate and talk about a lot. I can imagine that a lot of colleges and universities won't be the same after this coronavirus situation is settled, or there may be some significant changes. How do you see Catholic University and really academia as a whole changing or altering or making some altercations once things have, quote, returned to normal?
It's a really fascinating question, and one of the important things about the current situation is that we're devoting a lot of attention to try and see what the future is like. People wouldn't have imagined after the stock market crashed in 2008, when that recession began, what a long-term effect it would have on the economy. But the practice of law changed immensely and resulted in the shrinking of legal education by about 50%. Our law school is half the size it was a dozen years ago, and the reason is that a lot of businesses that lived through the recession decided that they didn't want to pay so much for legal services. A lot of law firms didn't hire as many summer associates and first-year associates, and for that reason, law schools stopped producing as many prospective lawyers. The legal market is coming back now, but in some ways it's changed forever. One of the questions that we're asking ourselves is, might there be changes of that kind that we haven't anticipated in the business of higher education? Take, for example, the way we're all learning to do better than we once did, the business of teaching online. I wouldn't be surprised if we did more of that rather than less as a result of these changes. Um, I write this column for the Catholic News Service, and anticipating this, almost a month ago, I ran one of my virtues classes with my first year students on Zoom just to see what it was like, and I wrote a column about this. And I said uh, that I was surprised by two things. One was I was surprised that it worked as well as it did. If you're as old as me, you might remember a television show called Hollywood Squares that had these nine people in squares, and it was a sort of uh, game on TV. That's what it looked like on Zoom. I had all 25 of my students in rows and columns of five, so I saw them all there, and I was able to speak to all of them. And the conversation went. It's a seminar, so people talk. It went better than I expected. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed is what I'm sure you're noticing, and the rest of the students who are away from school are noticing. Your life has changed in immense ways by being at the university. It isn't just the attendance at classes that forms your education. Your learning continues with the people that you're living with. It continues after class and before class in meetings with faculty members outside the classroom. Um, I think of my own life and my wife's life as a continual contribution to the education of our students, because we see them all the time. We'll see them at mass at 7:30 in the morning. We'll have lunch with them in the Prius. I'll see them at Starbucks. They'll come to walk our dog. People in the President's Society, like Caitlin, will be working in our office, and I the interchange that we have with our students is, the 3 hours of class that I teach in the course of a week are the smallest part of the education, and just think of what you're missing not being in school now. So that part, I think, for some universities that consider the formation of their students as part of their responsibility, that's something that um, um, video conferencing is never going to replace. So anyway, we have formed a committee of the Board of Trustees, an ad hoc committee, to study what changes are going to occur as a result of this. And within the university, I've asked each of the vice presidents to begin um, sort of Google document about what long-term changes we want to discuss. So I don't think we're going to know for a while, but we're beginning to think about it already.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your work on that. I can definitely attest to how things have changed since moving completely online. None of my roommates are back in my apartment right now, so it's been just me in this 2-bedroom apartment, quarantined for the past 7 days while taking classes and working with student government and everything. But I agree that the Zoom and the Google Meet and even the Skype classes have been working surprisingly a lot better than I originally anticipated. So
Mhm.
thank you for your leadership on that. Um, to kind of continue that conversation of COVID-19 with regards to campaigning and the current capital campaign we're in, one of the questions that we received was, how is the Light the Way campaign affected by the COVID-19 emergency? Will it take longer to meet our goal, or are our goals changing? And will you have to allocate fundraised money to deal with this current situation?
So this is a case where we actually have foreseen the future. We launched the public phase of our campaign in September downtown, and we set a goal of 400 million for the campaign, which will finish in 2022. And we set a goal of 70 million for this year. Um, I'm happy to say that last week we announced a new gift from Bill and Joanne Conway of $20 million more toward the construction of a new school of nursing along Michigan Avenue. And this brings the total for this year to $71 million. So this is already the best fundraising year in the university's history. We've already hit our goal for the year, and we can see a path to exceed 80 million by April 30th. I don't want to predict that, but for this year we're doing well. Also, in choosing the target for the campaign, the vice president for advancement and I had a number of long discussions over a period of a year about what the target should be. And at the end of the day, we budgeted in the campaign for a recession in the course of the campaign. So the reason we chose 400 million was even if there was a recession, we knew we could make it. So I'm confident that we're going to make our goal. Overall, we've by this point this year, the first year of the public phase, we've raised 306 million toward our goal of 400 million. So we're good there. I don't mean to say that the current situation isn't going to have financial impacts on the university. It will certainly have some, but I'm pretty confident about the success of our campaign.
Good. I'm happy to hear that, and I'm impressed. If anybody had any questions as to how successful our advancement has been over these past couple of years, which has been remarkable and historical years with university campaigning, to be able to say that you have planned for this recession, if it were to happen this year, is truly impeccable. So
I'm sorry our prediction came true.
I mean, yeah, unfortunate circumstances, but certainly attests to the amazing work of our advancement and your work. So bringing it back a little bit to overall Catholic University beyond the COVID-19 situation, one of the questions we had was regarding the counseling center. And it asks, it seems that the counseling center continually reaches capacity very early in the semester. Are there plans to increase staffing or office space in the near future?
Yeah, last year in fiscal 19, the counseling center had a really sizable increase in counseling in both fall and spring. And as a result, we needed to cease intake appointments earlier in the semester. So we started last year something called Let's Talk, and also emergency walk-in appointments so we could see students throughout both semesters. So we've been trying to make adjustments on an annual basis to ensure the availability of services, and the demand has been growing, not just at Catholic University, but this is a common experience at university counseling centers. In addition to continuing the Let's Talk, the drop-in appointments that we've been having, this year we instituted biweekly appointments for a portion of our clients, and that allowed staff to meet with more students. So let me just give you a few numbers about how this has worked. This year, as of December 10th, when we were leaving for Christmas vacation, the counseling center had seen a total of 511 people in some capacity, 511 compared to 402 last year. So that's an increase of more than 25%. We've had 53 emergency walk-ins compared to 32 last year. And we've had 160 Let's Talk walk-ins compared to 90 last semester. That's almost an 80% increase. So we've been able to meet more demand this spring. It's obviously been changed with the closing of the campus, but as of February 17th, so from the beginning of the semester up to the middle of February, we had just 12 students on the wait list compared to 3 times that many last year. And to that point, in this semester, the center had served a total of 655 people compared to 524 last year. So let me say, while we're on the subject of the counseling center, that as of March 16, we remain available over the phone to provide consultation to students who would have used our drop-in services. So the university is 202-319. So the number for a counselor is 5765. We'll call that for a counselor, and we'll direct you to the most appropriate form of support. So it's a struggle to keep up with it, but I really have to give my congratulations to the counseling center. They've really stepped up to meet the demand.
Yeah, I can say that I received a lot of questions about the counseling center, specifically during the time of the coronavirus being off campus. So I'm really happy to hear that they are continuing to have drop-in meetings over the phone. And I couldn't agree more. They have, throughout the country, seemingly, universities have been receiving more and more attendance in their counseling center and with individual meetings. So I'm happy to hear that not only have universities in Catholic University been able to handle these so well, but also have continued resources for them. So thank you on that. Moving over towards payment for the university and tuition, one of the questions that we received asked, as the cost of tuition at private schools continue to rise, what is Catholic University doing to drive undergraduate enrollment and ensure that we continue to remain competitive?
I'm really pleased with our enrollment management services. They've been very creative in trying to get the university better known. In the long run, that's really what the growth of our undergraduate student population depends on, getting us better known. So, um, a couple of years ago, we started something called Sophomore Search. We began to, we'd always done outreach to juniors to make them aware of the university so they'd begin applying in their senior year to, I mean, high school students to come here. We started a sophomore search program a few years ago, and over the past 3 years, we've reached out to more than 250,000 to 278,000. I think is the number of students we have reached out to. Um, this year, who knows what this year is going to end up with? It's such a uncharted waters that we're sailing into. But our applications this year are up 10% over what they were last year. That's a really good thing. Now, I have to say that last year I think they were artificially depressed on account of the clergy sex abuse crisis. We think that had some effect on the drop in the number of applications. But they're up not just 10% over last year, but they're up 2 to 5% over the 4 years before that. So we're trending in the right direction with our applications. We've begun a program. This is again, I think maybe we're in our third year of this program of inviting high school guidance counselors, all expenses paid, to come to the campus for a couple of days, and we introduce them to. I talk to them. The admission staff talks to them. They meet with faculty members. They tour the campus. They get some sense of what life is here is like, so that they can go back to the students in their high schools and talk to them firsthand about what Catholic University is like. Another thing that we really need to devote more resources to, and I wish we had still more resources to do it, is marketing efforts. We do marketing on our computers. We do marketing in diocesan newspapers. We have, but I'd love to be able to, love to be able to spend $1 million on marketing. We probably spend about a third of that every year on marketing the university. But there our admissions counselors travel to hundreds of school fairs and high schools around the country in the course of the year. We've begun the process of installing a few permanent admissions counselors. We have one in Miami who is bilingual, dedicated to South Florida, Puerto Rico, and we have another who's stationed in Boston who handles New England and from that place. They don't travel from Washington. They're located there. So there are any number of efforts that we're trying to make to increase applications, and that's what it will depend on in the long run. I mean, when students come here, just to give you an example of the importance of Odyssey Day, 61% of the students who come and look at us on Odyssey Day enroll. So if we get students to come here, that's going to solve the issue.
Wow, 61% on Odyssey Day ends up enrolling. That's impressive. But those are a lot of things that I've not heard about in terms of campaigning and keeping us competitive for enrollment. So that sounds really exciting. I look forward to senior or sophomore search and those final outcomes. Even with this whole situation at hand, it sounds remarkably impressive.
Thank you.
Going back to the buildings on campus, I know you spoke briefly about the Conway School of Nursing, but one of the students is wondering, has COVID-19 had any negative impact on the timeline of construction of the new dining hall? And how about the timelines for the new nursing school or new residence hall?
So far, not. The dining hall, as you know, is we're at the mercy of the students' of the city's permitting process. But we've begun construction on the dining hall, and so far it hasn't held that up. The same is true with the new residence halls and the nursing school. They're a little bit farther behind in the queue. So in the case of the new residence halls, we're in the process right now of drawings for that. We've chosen a design firm, and I think we've chosen a construction firm. So we're finishing the the drawings for those, and we're ready to start when that process is done and the permitting is done. For the nursing school, we have an RFP out now. That's a request for proposals to choose the architectural firm that'll do the design. I think what it's going to depend on, if you've been reading the newspapers, you've noticed that people talk about their supply lines being affected. So I had a meeting with the vice president for finance today, who's in charge of facilities as well, and he was saying it hasn't happened yet, but the talk in the industry is keep your eye out for what might get held up. Some product, I don't know, let's say some plumbing supplies that are manufactured in China, and supplies are getting hard to ship because businesses are shut down, and we can't put the walls up until we get the plumbing inside, and we can't get the plumbing supply. You see how that might go. It really worries me because this is a golden opportunity to proceed with construction. We're not going to inconvenience anybody. We got this big utility project going on, and I'm sure you all have experienced how we're tearing up the sidewalks, putting fences here and there. You think you're going to go up to the fitness center, and you can't get there from where you are. You're going to have to go somewhere else. Anyway, with no students here, we can go like gangbusters on those projects, and add to that the great advantage of having good weather. We essentially didn't have a winter this year, made up for the terrible winter that we had last year. So we've caught up on our utilities construction and are trying to make progress beyond it. But so I hope it won't hold up any of those projects, and it shouldn't. At least so far, it hasn't been a matter of getting people to work on the projects. If there is a problem that we foresee, it might be with supply chains.
Well, I hope those supply chain issues don't come into effect, but I'm happy to hear that everything as of now is right on along the schedule. A follow-up there regarding the new dining hall. Once the new dining hall is at full working capacity and everything, one of the students was wondering, what will the PRIS be used for after this new dining hall is built?
Well, so we've had a group working on that, including getting a lot, consulting a lot with students. That we're certainly going to dedicate more space to students in the PRIS than we're able to now. We've had architects making recommendations about this, and the plans that they've given us would cost about $11 million. So I'm not sure about that. We haven't yet determined how much is going to be divided between space for hanging out and studying on the one hand, for example, and how much to student organizations, and we need more for both. We also hope to have some kind of bookstore-like function, think apparel, and probably a post office and Amazon function, for letters and supplies and so on. We will retain some retail dining facilities. We'll likely phase whatever work we end up doing there, with the priority being repurposing the current student restaurant for use. But this is something on which we depend very heavily on the students' advice for what use we ought to make of it. So I think the two variables are what the students want and what it's going to cost.
Sure. Thank you for that.
Maybe more.
I will. Regarding the new residence halls and resident life in general, one of the students was wondering, is the university still planning to implement a 3-year housing requirement for the class of 2023, or how is this all being communicated?
Yeah, we are. And the class of 2023 has known about the 3-year requirement since sometime before Odyssey Day last year. So it's been part of our communications to admitted students since 2019. And the class of 2024 has been told right along about the 3-year requirement. So we're planning on doing it, and it won't come as any surprise to the people who are arriving.
Good. Well, I'm happy to hear that. And the last question that we have is a bit multifaceted, but one of the students was wondering, since we have moved classes online, courses have changed their expectations and assignments quite drastically in some cases. How do you see the coronavirus changing the grading system, and do you think that this will affect any students graduating?
Maybe. I don't know if it'll result in permanent changes, but one of the things that we're doing now is we're working on a form for students to elect pass-fail grading. Uh, there's been a lot of discussions. I know you've had some discussions with the provost about this, and other students have been asking about it. So I think what we're talking about is both making pass-fail an option that students can elect, and extending the deadline for electing pass-fail to the very end of the semester. So I think we have to be sensitive for as well as the Google Meet and Zoom and the other online opportunities are working. We need to be sensitive to the ways in which all of these changes have had an effect on the students' study for the semester. So I think that that's something we're going to offer.
Yeah, that was something that I've been hearing a lot from a lot of students, and was happy to have a couple conversations. So thank you for that. And I know a lot of
Sure.
the students hearing this will likely appreciate that. That being said, that is all the questions that I have for you, President Garvey. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your night to meet with me, to record this meeting, to answer these questions, and for your leadership, not only throughout this coronavirus situation, but for the entirety of my 4 years here at Catholic University. It has been an absolute blessing.
Thank you, Brennan. It's been a great pleasure to deal with you. So thanks for having me tonight.
All right. That being said, everybody, we are going to sign off. So thank you. Good luck with the rest of your semester, and God bless.